The first thing Rowan ever said to me was, "Do you have a machine that can get blood out of denim?" And I want you to sit with that for a second because that is genuinely the opening line of this entire story. Not hello, not what time you close. Blood out of denim said completely calm, like he was asking about a stain from spaghetti sauce. I ran the overnight desk at a 24-hour laundromat 2 blocks from Station 14, which meant I saw a lot of strange things at 3 in the morning, but a guy in a soot-streaked fire department t-shirt asking about blood was a new one even for me. "It's not mine," he added like that was the part I'd been worried about. "Well, some of it might be mine, small cut, I'm fine. My name's Desmond. I was 24, working nights mostly because I liked the quiet and I was trying to save up to go back to school for something I still hadn't figured out. I'd worked at that desk for a year and a half and developed a pretty good radar for regulars, drunks, and people who just needed somewhere warm to sit for 20 minutes. Rowan didn't fit any category I had. "Cold water first," I told him. "Hot water sets blood, it'll bond right into the fibers. You want the machine in the back, the one that still has the good agitator." He looked at me for a second like I'd said something impressive, which, in hindsight, laundry advice is a pretty low bar to clear, but he seemed genuinely thrown by it. "Huh, okay, yeah, thank you." He was quiet while his stuff washed, sitting on one of the plastic chairs with his forearms on his knees, staring at nothing the way people do when they're somewhere else in their head. I didn't bother him. You learn not to working nights. Some people want to talk and some people are just there to exist for a while without anyone asking anything of them. When his load finished, he came up to the counter to grab quarters for the dryer and he said out of nowhere, "We lost the house tonight. Not nobody died, everybody's fine, the house is just gone. Sometimes you get there in time and it doesn't matter anyway." He said it like he was testing whether he could still form the sentence out loud. Then he blinked like he'd surprised himself. "Sorry, you didn't ask." "You can say it anyway," I said. "I'm just doing laundry money either way." That got a small, tired laugh out of him. He left around 4, said thanks, didn't give his name, and I didn't think I'd see him again, mostly because I didn't let myself expect things like that to matter. He came back 4 nights later. Different clothes, no blood this time, and he said, "I actually have laundry tonight, this isn't just an excuse," before I'd even asked, which told me he'd been thinking about how it might look, which told me more than he probably meant it to. I said, "I wasn't gonna accuse you of anything," and he said, "No, I know, I just," and then didn't finish the sentence, just shrugged and went to load his machine. That became a pattern over the next few weeks. Not every night, but often enough that I started noticing the rhythm of it, started noticing that some nights he clearly had a real reason to be there, and some nights his basket had like 4 items in it, which is not really a load, that's an excuse dressed up as a load. I never called him on it, I liked him showing up too much to risk it. We talked more each time. I learned his name on the third visit when I finally just asked, and he told me like it was a small confession, Rowan, and then, almost embarrassed, "Sorry, I don't know why I didn't say that the first 4 times." "You were busy dealing with a burned-down house," I said. "I'll allow it." He asked me things too, where I was from, what the school thing was about, why I worked nights when I clearly wasn't a night person, which fair, I do apparently look tired even when I'm not. I told him more than I usually told people. There was something about the hour and the hum of the machines and the fact that he always looked like he'd just walked out of something heavy that made it feel okay to be honest back. I should tell you a little about who I was before any of this, because I don't think the rest of it makes sense otherwise. I'd had exactly one relationship that mattered back in community college, with a guy who ended things by just slowly stopping texting back until I got the message. Nothing dramatic, no big blow-up, just a fade so gradual I couldn't even point to the day it ended. It left me with this quiet policy of not letting myself want things out loud. I'd notice I like someone and just file it away somewhere I didn't have to look at it. So when I started rearranging my whole internal calendar around whether a particular fireman was going to walk through that door, I noticed myself doing it and felt almost embarrassed, like I'd broken my own rule without permission. There was a stretch in the second month where I didn't see him for 8 straight days, and I told myself it didn't matter. And then on day 9 I caught myself checking the door every time the bell over it rang, and had to admit to myself, alone, refolding a stranger's bedsheets at 1 in the morning, that I was in trouble. He showed up on day 9, it turned out, off on a mutual aid call 2 towns over, which is why the gap. He didn't know I'd noticed the gap at all, I didn't tell him. About 6 weeks in, he came in around 2 a.m. looking different than usual, not tired in the normal way, but shaken, hands not quite steady when he was loading quarters into the machine. Bad one tonight, I asked. Kid, he said and stopped, and I watched him decide whether to keep going. We got him out, he's gonna be okay physically. But I had him in my arms for maybe 90 seconds getting him to the ambulance and he was crying and I kept telling him he was safe and the whole time I was thinking I don't actually know that. I say it because it's what you say, I don't know if it's true when I'm saying it. I came around the counter, which I never did, and sat next to him on the folding chairs. I think that's still true though, I said, even if you don't know it at the moment, you did get him out. I know, logically I know that. He rubbed his face with both hands. It doesn't always catch up to the part of me that's still standing in the smoke. We sat there a long while not talking, and at some point his hand ended up near mine on the plastic seat between us, not quite touching, both of us clearly aware of the half-inch of space and neither of us closing it. I remember thinking, this is either going to become something or I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing laundry desk small talk with a man I'm completely in love with and never say a word about it. Neither option felt survivable. He closed the gap first, just laced his fingers through mine, didn't look at me while he did it. Kept staring at the dryer like it was the most interesting dryer in the world. Is this okay? He said quietly. Yeah, I said, it's okay. We didn't kiss that night? We just sat there holding hands until his dryer buzzed, and then he let go to fold his clothes, and it was somehow the most normal, unremarkable transition, like we'd just downshifted from one kind of closeness into another. I want to tell you it was smooth after that, but Rowan had a habit of running hot and cold that took me a while to understand wasn't about me. Some visits he'd be open easy, would linger long after his laundry was done just to keep talking. Other visits he'd be closed off polite, would leave the second the dryer stopped, and I'd go home those nights turning it over trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, when it usually had nothing to do with me at all. There was one night in there, right in the middle of all that inconsistency, where another regular of mine, a guy named Perry who came in every Sunday to wash his uniform for the hospital where he worked security, made some comment to me at the counter about Rowan, said something like, "You two an item or what?" loud enough that Rowan clearly heard it from across the room. I laughed it off, said something noncommittal, and I watched Rowan's face do this complicated thing, not upset exactly, more like a man watching a question land somewhere he wasn't ready for it to land. He left 10 minutes later without finishing his dryer cycle, actually left a load of wet towels in the machine, which he'd never done before, and I stood there holding a stranger's damp gym clothes wondering if I'd just watched the whole thing end before it started. He didn't come back for 6 days after that, longest gap yet. I finally asked him about all of it, the coldness, the disappearing when he did come back after a night where he showed up, said about 11 words the entire time and left fast enough that I didn't even get to say goodnight properly. Next time he came in I said, "Can I ask you something and you don't have to answer?" "Sure." Some nights you're here and it's like you're not really here, and I've been trying not to make that about me, but I also don't know what it is if it's not about me, so. He was quite a second, folding a shirt slower than a shirt needs to be folded. "It's not about you, I promise it's not about you." He set the shirt down. "This job, statistically, the odds of something happening to me aren't nothing. I've been to 2 funerals for guys I trained with, and I keep thinking if I let this," he gestured between us, vague, unfinished, "if I let this become a real thing and then something happens to me, I'm not just gone, I've made somebody else carry that. My mom already cares enough to worry about me. I don't know if it's fair to ask that of anybody else too." "That's not really your call to make on my behalf," I said, gently as I could. "I get to decide what I'm willing to carry, you don't get to protect me from a choice I haven't even been allowed to make yet." He looked at me for a long moment. "That's a very good point and I hate that it is. I will do my best. There's also," he said and stopped, started again, clearly working up to something harder than the first thing. "There's also the fact that I've never actually done this. With a guy. I've thought about it, I've known about myself for a long time honestly, I just never let it go anywhere, and some of the coldness, if I'm being fully honest, is me getting scared of how much I want this and not knowing what to do with a want that big." "You could just tell me that instead of going quiet on me," I said. "I'm not going anywhere because you're figuring something out, I'd just like to be let in on the figuring." He laughed, actually laughed, and something in his shoulders came down that I hadn't realized was up. "Okay, deal." After that he stopped disappearing on me mostly. Not completely, some nights the job clearly still had its hooks in him, and I learned to just let those nights be quiet instead of taking it personally. But the good nights got more frequent, and eventually he started coming in even on nights he had zero laundry at all, would just show up around the end of my shift with 2 coffees, no pretense left, and walk me the 2 blocks home. We had our first kiss on one of those walks actually, not some big planned moment, just standing at the crosswalk waiting for the light, him saying something about how the coffee shop on the corner had bad coffee, and he still bought it every week out of loyalty to nothing in particular, and me laughing at how dumb that was, and him just leaning over mid-laugh and kissing me like it was the most obvious next sentence in the conversation. The light changed and neither of us moved for it. Word got around at his station eventually, the way things do. He told me about it nervously one night, said one of the older guys, Captain Alvarez, had pulled him aside and asked if the rumors were true, and Rowan had braced for the worst, and instead the guy just said, "Good, you've seemed less like a ghost lately. Bring him to the pancake breakfast sometime," which apparently is as close to a blessing as that particular fire station gives out. Not everyone on the crew was that easy about it. There was one guy, a probie named Foss, who got weird and distant with Rowan for a couple weeks and made comments that weren't outright cruel but weren't kind either. Rowan didn't let it get to him the way I think it would have gotten to him a year earlier. He told me about it instead of sitting on it alone, which felt like its own kind of progress. The two of us learning together how to actually talk instead of just enduring things quietly and hoping the other person noticed. I met his mother about 3 months in at her insistence, apparently, after Rowan finally told her about me over the phone in a conversation he described afterward as way less dramatic than I built it up to be in my head. She hugged me for an uncomfortably long time the first time we met and told me very directly, "He's been closed up since his brother's accident, so whatever you're doing, keep doing it," which was the first I'd heard about a brother, and which explained a whole layer of Rowan I hadn't had language for yet. He told me the rest of that story later, slowly, over a few different nights, about a brother he'd lost young, about how some of his fear of getting close to me wasn't just about his own job, it was about how fast a person can be there and then not be there, and how he'd built a whole life trying not to feel that particular kind of loss again. The night that scared me the most happened around 4 months in. I hadn't seen him in 3 days, which wasn't unheard of with his schedule, but something about the silence felt different. And I couldn't have told you why, except that you get a feeling sometimes and you don't know where it comes from. He showed up on the fourth night with his arm in a sling, a burn wrapped along his forearm, walking slower than usual, and my whole chest just dropped. "I'm okay," he said immediately, hands up. Well, one hand up, the other one wasn't cooperating. "I promise it looks worse than it is. The roof partially came down, I got clipped, I'm fine, they cleared me, I just wanted," he stopped. "I wanted to see you. I know that's a weird reason to leave the hospital and come to a laundromat. I don't have any actual laundry. I just needed to see you were real, and this was real before I let myself really feel what almost happened tonight." I came around the counter faster than I think I've ever moved in my life and just held onto him, careful of the arm, and he let out this breath against my shoulder like he'd been holding it since the roof came down. "I was so scared," he admitted, muffled into my shoulder. "Not in the moment you don't have time to be scared, after, lying in the ambulance thinking about all the things I hadn't said yet." "Say them now," I said. "I love you," he said, plain, no dramatics to it, just tired and honest and true. "I've loved you since probably the blood-on denim night," which I recognize is an insane thing to admit, but there it is. I laughed and cried a little at the same time, which is a genuinely uncomfortable combination, and I said it back. And he kissed me right there by the folding table with his arm in a sling and detergent boxes stacked all around us, which is not exactly the romantic backdrop anybody dreams about, but it's the one we got, and I wouldn't trade it. The weeks after that were softer than anything before them. He healed up. He started actually talking to someone, a counselor the department connected him with, about his brother and about the job and about all the ways he'd learned to brace for loss before it even happened. I watched him get lighter in small ways I don't think he even noticed about himself, laughing easier, staying present in a conversation instead of half somewhere else, reaching for my hand without that half-second hesitation he used to have. There was a harder moment near the 6-month mark that I think is worth telling you too, because it wasn't all easy after the arm, after the "I love you." He had a call that hit close to the old wound, another kid, another fire, and this one didn't end the way the first one had. Nobody's fault, nothing he could have done differently, the crew all said so, his captain said so, but Rowan spiraled for a stretch, pulled back into himself in a way that scared me because it looked exactly like the closed-off version of him from those very first weeks. He stopped coming by for almost 2 weeks, texted short replies, made excuses about extra shifts he didn't actually have. I almost let him disappear into it. I want to be honest about that because I think it's important. There was a night I sat in my apartment convinced this was just how it was going to end, quietly, the same way my last relationship had faded out. But I remembered what he'd told me about wanting to be let in on the figuring instead of shut out of it, and I decided that had to go both ways. So I showed up at the station instead of waiting at the laundromat for once, sat in the parking lot until his shift ended, and when he came out and saw me there, his face did something complicated and relieved all at once. "You don't get to disappear on me just because it's hard," I told him, standing there in a fire station parking lot at 6 in the morning. "I told you I get to choose what I carry. I'm choosing this. Stop trying to protect me from it." He didn't say anything for a second, and then he just pulled me in, arms still a little stiff from months back, and held on like he'd needed someone to say that to him more than he'd let himself admit. That was the last time he really pulled away like that. Not because everything got easy after, the job kept being the job, hard nights kept happening, but because we both got better at not letting the hard nights turn into silence. He still does laundry there sometimes, even though he could easily do it at his own place now most nights since he basically lives at mine. I think he likes the ritual of it. I think some part of him will always associate that hum of the machines with the first place he let himself be honest about what he was carrying, and I understand that better than almost anything else about him. Last month he brought his mother by the laundromat just to show her, he said, where it all started, and she made him retell the blood-on denim story in front of me like she hadn't already heard it a dozen times, and cried a little at the end of it anyway, which made both of us laugh at her. Gently, the way you laugh at someone you love being exactly who they are. I still think about that opening line sometimes. "Do you have a machine that can get blood out of denim?" The strangest first sentence anyone's ever said to me, and somehow it turned into the rest of my life. If you've ever fallen for someone who kept finding small excuses to come back to you, I hope this reminded you that sometimes those excuses are the realest thing a person can offer. Not everyone says it with words first. Sometimes they just keep showing up night after night until the truth of it is too obvious to keep pretending it's about the laundry. And sometimes loving someone means showing up even when they're trying to push you out, not to force your way in, but to remind them the door was never supposed to be locked in the first place. If this one got you, tell us where you're watching from, your name and age in the comments, and let us know what kind of story you want next. We've got plenty more, and every one of them is going somewhere you haven't been yet.